you with a awesome new magic video. Today we're going to be doing kind of an unboxing of one of the new 2018 Magic the Gathering Commander precons. I apologize if you guys did watch earlier, and this is a similar video. I was in a place where there wasn't such great audio, so today I've decided to refilm it. So we're going to go through the deck. I've actually sorted it as well because I noticed at first when I opened it, the cards were in a weird sort order. So I've actually gone and sorted all the cards in terms of like planeswalkers, creatures, artifacts, sorceries, etc. to be able to clearly go through all the cards that you get. So it comes with 100 cards as you would expect from a Commander precon, as well as includes a bunch of really new cards. So first off, of course, we always do get our oversized version of our main deck commander. So this is Lord Windgrace, or as a bunch of us are referring to him as Wakanda or the Black Panther, because he very much resembles T'Challa, or the Black Panther from the Marvel Comics. So what he does is he is a 5 CMC planeswalker that starts with 5 loyalty. You can give him 2 extra loyalty to ditch a card and then draw a card, and if it's a land, draw an additional card. And we're going to see there's a bunch of land in this deck. Like, this deck is mostly land. It's more than I'm used to seeing with commander decks because I don't really play too many green decks. You can neg him for 3 to return up to 2 target lands from your graveyard to battlefield. So if you're ditching lands for his first ability, you can always just neg him for 3 to put them back on the field, which is pretty cool. And then you can destroy up to 6, plus his ulti to neg 11. You can destroy up to 6 target non-land permanents and create 6 2/2 green warrior cat tokens with Forest Walk, which is pretty powerful. And there's a really cool combo. You can use this with the dragon egg tokens, which we'll talk about when we get to them, where you can blow them up. You'll get your tokens, you'll get your cats, and then your eggs will transform, which is pretty cool. So obviously they said this is Nature's Vengeance, and it's a land deck, so there are a lot of cards in this deck with the landfall trigger. So you're going to be wanting to, you definitely want to land drop every time in this deck, which is probably why there's so many. And of course, if you do have too many lands in hand, you can always use your commander's ability to filter your hand, which is really, really cool. So first off, of course, yeah, you get your Lord Windgrace as a small size, just for convenience sake, and if you don't want to play him as commander, which is perfectly fine. You do, as always, get 2 extra foil cards that can be your commanders. They are in all your deck's colors. So the first one is the new Spider Commander, Fantas the Warweaver. I've mentioned Fantas on the channel before, as I actually wanted to do a video on her not too long ago. I just didn't get the time, unfortunately. So Fantas is a 6 CMC legendary spider with vigilance and reach, as you would expect, because she's a spider. However, all creatures, her abilities are, all creatures attack each combat if able, and whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, you get to put a +1/+1 on Fantas the Warweaver. Now, she isn't on her own. She is a very good card. I just don't think she should have been a spider because she doesn't really do too much for spiders, but I'm sure down the track we'll find ways to use her in spiders, which will make her pretty cool. And if I do end up making Fantas my commander over Ishkana, I will do an updated profile for you guys. But if you guys do want to see a spider tribal deck profile, I do have one up here on the channel. Next up, we get the Hydra, a 3-cost legendary Hydra. Now, this card is actually insane for commander. So it's a CMC X, well, 3 and then X. So obviously it's a Hydra, so its X is going to be worth, in this sense, the power and toughness are equal to the cost you pay. And it gets +1/+1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana you spent to cast it, which is pretty powerful. Also, when it attacks, you may exile a target creature card with lesser power from your graveyard, and if you do, create a token that's a copy of that card that's tapped and attacking, and the token gets exiled at the end of combat. But what makes this card really cool is it, even with the extra command attacks, every time your opponents kill it, it's going to get stronger every time you recast it. And because we have so much land in this deck, we're not going to have too much of an issue recasting our commanders if they get killed. Next up, we do get a legendary creature called Sancha, Sleeper Agent. Now, she's not full Jund colors. She is the Rakdos colors, but that is perfectly fine. And she's actually a really interesting card. So basically, if she enters the battlefield, an opponent of your choice gains control of her. And she attacks each combat if able and can't attack its owner or planeswalkers its owner controls. So you give her to your opponent and she can't attack you, which is pretty cool. And then you can pay 3 to make her controller lose 2 life and then draw a card. But the good thing is any player can activate this ability. So she'd actually be an interesting commander. I'm not sure. I think she'd work really well with Blas, because I'm working on the Blas deck at the moment, because you know, it fits the theme of doing other people to do his dirty work. So she's actually a pretty cool card that is pretty interesting for this deck. I was pretty surprised as well that this deck actually came with not one but two dragons. So first off, the better one in my opinion for what the theme of the deck does is Nestling Dragon. So Nestling Dragon is a 5 CMC dragon with it's 5/4, has flying and has landfall, which is something I've never really seen on a dragon before, but it's still pretty cool. So whenever a land enters battlefield, you get to make one of these, which is pretty cool. And then when these die, they have Defender, so you obviously know that when they die, they become a 2/2 flying dragon token with Fire Breath, which is pretty cool. And of course, you can use your Windgrace's second ability, second ability to destroy any his ulti ability, to target up to 6 of those dragon tokens, because you're going to make a lot, and you can blow them up, get your cat tokens, and then when these die, they become the other dragons, which is pretty cool. So definitely a good card for this deck, in my personal opinion. Next up, we have the Flame Blast Dragon. So it's just a generic dragon. It's a 6 CMC dragon, 5/5 with flying. And when it attacks, you may pay X red. If you do, Flame Blast deals X damage to any target. So pretty cool, especially if you're doing these decks, playing these commander decks against each other. You can swing with this dude and then just go and kill. So you can swing at someone else's Planeswalker, and then you can use his ability to go hit someone else's Planeswalker as well, which is really, really cool, because some of these Planeswalkers can get insane. I think it was like the white, blue, black one can actually like shift the cards on the field, which is pretty good, funny, but yeah. So next up we have Loyal Apprentice. So Loyal Apprentice is haste for a 2 CMC 2/1 human artificer. He has Lieutenant, so if you have your commander at the beginning of your turn, you get a 1/1 Thopter, flying, and it gains haste until end of turn, so that's pretty cool. Next up we have the Emissary of Grudges. So Emissary of Grudges is a 6-cost Efreet with 6/5, and when it enters the battlefield, you secretly choose an opponent. And then when you get to reveal the player you choose new targets for the target spell or ability if it's controlled by the chosen player and it targets your opponent that you control. You only get this ability once, and it feels kind of weird. Like, you can pick the player and then you can just change. It feels like you can just change it mid-game, which is pretty weird. But I didn't really get a chance to test this out when we were playing our games. I went off in the game I was playing with it, but mostly because I was abusing the Landfall Dragon. But yeah, this card still seems pretty interesting. Next up, we have the Turn Timber Sower. So it's a 3 CMC elf. I mean, we're playing a landfall deck, so it makes sense there's going to be some elves in here. So whenever one or more lands are put into your graveyard from anywhere, you get a 0/1 plant creature token, and then you can pay 1 green, sacrifice 3 creatures, then get a target land from your graveyard to the battlefield. Again, working really well with our Commander's ability that allows us to draw cards by ditching lands. We have cards that put them back on the battlefield. I'm thinking that obviously Crucible of Worlds would be a really good card to put in this deck, because you can just play those cards from your graveyard if you really want to. You don't really, and then you can just like ditch them. You don't have to ever worry about not getting land drop all these cards to put your lands back on the battlefield, which is pretty cool. Of course, we've got Sakura Tribelder, of course, pretty straightforward in a green deck, decent ramp. We have the Whip Tongue Hydra. So it is a 6-cost 6 CMC Lizard Hydra that's 4/4 with reach, and when it enters battlefield, destroy all creatures with flying. So put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature destroyed this way. Really good for reach focused decks. Not so great in spiders, but would have been nice to see this as a spider, because it'd be a cool card for a spider deck. But unfortunately, Fantas was the only spider we got. Next up is this weird card that I've never actually seen anything like this before. So it is 2 cards in one. One is a legendary creature and one is a normal. So you've got Baduka Gardener, which is a 2 CMC 2/1 human monk. It allows you to tap it to put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. If you control 10 or more lands, you get to... so if you control 10 or more, you get to flip him. So you can't play him that way. So then the other side of him is here's a legendary creature human monk for 3/3. For 6 CMC, you can tap him, create an XX green elemental where X is the number of lands you control. So pretty scary late game, and in this deck, it's not too hard to get 10 lands on the battlefield, because we do have a lot of ramp. We have the Loyal Guardian. So it is a 5 CMC Rhino with Trample. With Lieutenant, if you begin combat on your turn, if you control your commander, he gets +1/+1 on each creature. So decent bolstering and ramp there. Next up, we have another elf, an elf druid called Fairhaven Elf. She's a 3 CMC elf druid. When she enters battlefield, search your library for a basic land, pull a battlefield, tap, and search your then shuffle. Obviously, there are probably better ways to do this sort of thing, but for a precon, it's still fine. And considering how much ramp we have, it's not too far-fetched. Of course, we get Acidic Slime, which is really good. A decent green card. We have the Molgroth Monstrosity, a 7 CMC insect with trample, and when it dies, exile it and then return 2 cards from from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it dies, you get 2 creatures back, and it's an 8/8. So it's something that your opponents might want to deal with, and if they do deal with it, you get some creature cards back from the graveyard, which many of the creature cards we've seen so far do have card effects that give a small land, which is really cool. We have another elf. This is an elf scout called Borderland Explorer. It's a 2 CMC 3/1. When it enters the battlefield, each player may discard a card, and each player who discards the card may search the library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in their hand, shuffle their library. So a nice little group hug card. There's like, don't hit me, I'll let you search for land. It's pretty cool. We have a 1 cost 1/1 insect called Scroot Mob, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 5 more lands, you get 4 +1/+1 counters on this guy, and this guy can get pretty scary pretty quickly. It's a nice one drop, and considering how easily we can get 5 or more lands, it's pretty cool. But we do have to keep him alive while we get those lands, so we have to be careful there. Next up, we have the Crash of the Rhino Beetles, a 5 CMC insect for 5/5 with trample, and it gets +10/+10 as long as you control 10 or more lands. Not hard in this deck. We have a human druid named Yalina Elf. So this card is a 3 CMC human druid for 2/1. When it dies, you search your library for 2 basic lands, reveal them, put in your hand, shuffle your library, and you can pay 2 to sack him to draw a card. So decent pluses there. Next up, we have one of my most hated cards in the game, Avenger of Zendikar, because I've been given lots of reasons to actually hate this card. You guys probably know what it does. It's a 7 CMC elemental that gives you a land when it enters, and then of course when you draw landfall, when you play a land, those tokens get +1/+1. You can get out of hand very, very quickly. Next up, we have the Centaur Vine Crusher, a 4 CMC 1/1 plant centaur with trample. It enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of lands in all graveyards. So if you're ditching a lot of the land cards for your commander, this guy's going to get pretty big. And then whenever a land's put into graveyard from anywhere, you may pay 2. If you do, it comes from your graveyard to your hand. So if you use your ability of your commander to discard land to draw, this guy can come back to your hand, which is pretty cool. We have the 6 CMC Rampaging Balofs with a trample landfall. When it enters battlefield and you control, create a 4/4 Grand Beast token, which is pretty cool. Nice landfall trigger there. We have the Boloff Wood Crusher. It is another 6 CMC beast with landfall, and when it enters under your control, whenever a land enters, he gets +4/+4 and trample, so he gets pretty big. Next up, we have a vampire, which was pretty surprising for me. Blood Tracker. It is a flying vampire wizard for 4 CMC for 2/2, and you can pay 1 black and pay 2 life to give it a +1/+1 counter, and when it leaves the battlefield, draw a card for each +1/+1. So pretty cool. Next up, we have the Soul of Innistrad. It is a 6 CMC avatar with Death Touch, and it's a 6/6. You can pay 5, return up to 3 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, and then you can pay 5, exile it from your graveyard, return up to 3 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So definitely good utility there. We have the Loyal Subordinate. It is a 3 CMC zombie for a 3/1 with Menace, which is really cool. I didn't see too many cards that we were playing with Menace, so it's nice to see it. So it has a lieutenant, of course. If you control your commander at the beginning of your combat, each opponent loses 3 life. So really cool card. Next up, we have the Zendikar Incarnated. It is a 4 CMC elemental with 4 toughness and asterisk power, which is equal to the number of lands you control. Again, we're playing a land-based deck, so we're going to have a lot of land. We have the Rubelhulk, which is a 6 CMC elemental. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. It has Blood Rush, which the cost of 3 CMC. Discard him, and target attacking creature gets +X/+X, where X is the number of lands you control. So 2 really good elementals that get power based on lands. Our last creature in the deck is the Channelhold Worm for an 8/7 CMC. It's not a legendary creature, which is a shame, because it would be interesting to have something like this. So when it deals damage to your opponent, you may return target graveyard from your hand. I guess if this thing was a commander, it would be a little bit too busted, but still a nice card to have because it lets you get any card, which is cool. So moving on to our instance, we have the Fury Storm for 4 CMC. It's one of the new commander types of spells we get that we get extra times. We get to copy it every time we cast a commander. There's some really cool ones in the white, blue, green one as well. So, copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This card seems really weird to be in a Jund deck. I'd rather have cards that allow me to like search and stuff, but it's still somewhat interesting. We have the Moonlight Bargain, which is really good for us for hitting those land drops. Those if we really want those lands in the graveyard. So we get to, for 5 CMC, look at top 5 cards of our library. For each card, put that card in our graveyard unless you pay 2 life. Put the rest into our hands. So nice, nice, good old black card. We have Grapple with the Past for 2 CMC. Put the top 3 cards of your library into a graveyard. Then return a creature or land from your graveyard to your hand. Really good for 2. Really good in Delirium decks as well, because it really helps. So, I mean, this card, those last 2 cards can easily go into Spiders really easily. Next up, we have the Harrow. So we have to sack a land as an additional cost. And we search up to 2 basic lands, put them over the tap. So we plus 1 land, which is cool. We have Consigned to Dust. It is a 3 CMC instant with Strive. So I believe, I'm not familiar with Strive. Obviously it says cost an extra 3 more to cast for each target beyond the first, but destroy any number of target artifacts or enchantments. So it's like a fair card. We have Grisly Salvage, great card. 2 CMC, reveal top 5, get a creature card, put the rest in the graveyard. Really good for Delirium decks or decks that are activating out the graveyard. We have our Commander's very own spell, which is called Windgrace's Judgment, a 5 CMC instant. For any number of opponents, destroy target non-land permanent that player controls. Very powerful card. Because you can destroy basically anything you want. Putrefy, just a standard board wipe. That's our last instant. Moving on to our enchantments, we don't have too many because, again, we're more of a land-focused deck. We do have Kahani Heart Expedition. It's a 2 CMC enchantment with landfall, so whenever a land enters, you get a quest counter. Remove 3 quest counters, sack it, and search for 2 basic lands, put them over the tap, and shuffle your library. So just decent ramp. Retreat to Haga is a 3 CMC enchantment with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get to choose either giving one of your creatures +1/+0 and Death Touch, or force each opponent to lose 1 life and you gain 1 life. A lot of these cards are obviously more relevant if you're playing something like Fantas as your commander as opposed to Windgrace. We have Death Reap Ritual, which is a 4 CMC enchantment with Morbid. So at the beginning of each instant, if a creature died this turn, you may also draw a card, which is pretty cool. Especially, that card's really good if you're using Fantas, because if you have to swing every turn and then they block your stuff, you get to draw cards from it, which is pretty cool. Artifact-wise, we get the Soul Ring, which is in every precon, and we get Seer's Sundial. It is a 4-cost artifact with landfall. Whenever land enters, pay 2, draw a card, and we're playing a lot of land ends whenever a land enters. So if a land comes in via ramp, we do get to trigger this ability off as well, which is really powerful. Moving on to our sorceries, we have a lot of sorceries in this deck. First off, we have Reality Scramble, which lets us pick 1 card from our field, chuck it on the bottom of our deck, and reveal cards until we get something that shares the same type and place it on the field. And we can also cast it from our graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to its other abilities. That's pretty cool. We have the Chain Reaction. This is a 4 CMC sorcery that deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. So if someone's getting out of control, or you've got a lot of tokens, you can just wipe the board pretty easily with that card. We've got some nice ramp, of course. We have Explore, we have the good old Cultivate, as well as the good old Exploding Veggies. A very nice ramp to get in this deck. Obviously no Karma's Reach, probably because of the Arcane, I believe. But obviously you can go pick up a Kadama's Reach as well if you want. But there's enough ramp in this deck to just out of the box for playing with people, which is good. You have Haunting Wilds, which is a sorcery with kicker, so you get to pay an additional 4 when you cast it. Search up to 2 forests, put them on the battlefield tapped. I like Skyshield Claim a little bit better than that because the forests come into play untapped. It does, I believe, cost you an extra mana, but it's worth it. And if it was kicked, untap all forests, put onto the battlefield. This way, they become 3/3 creatures. So it's good if you kick it. If you're not going to bother about kicking it, just play Skyshield Claim if you can get your hands on one. Far Wanderings is a really cool 3-cost sorcery. So search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, tap, shuffle your library. Then if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, instead search your library for up to 3 basics, put them on the battlefield. So this is something you don't really want to play early on. You want to play it later to get the extra benefits. We have the Ruinous Path, which is a destroy target creature or planeswalker as a sorcery. That is very powerful, especially when you're playing out of the box with these commanders, because a lot of people will be using the planeswalkers, and you definitely do not want them to ult. It allows you to awaken for 7. If you cast the spell for 7, also put 4+1/+1 counters on target land you control, and it becomes a 0/0 elemental with haste. It's still a land, so very good for this deck. Stitched Together is next. It allows you to return a target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and then it comes to the battlefield if there are 7 or more cards in your grave. So really cool. So either a salvage card or a special or a revival card. Now we have one of my favorite sorceries in the deck, which is called the Worm Harvest. It is a 5 CMC sorcery that lets you create a 1/1 black and green worm creature token for each land in your graveyard. And then, of course, you can retrace it by playing. You can play it from your graveyard by scanning a land and paying its other additional costs. So this card's one of the main reasons why you want to put a ton of lands in your graveyard, because you get as much plus out of this as possible, which is really cool. And that card's also really good for Fantas, as you're able to play a bunch of 1/1 tokens and swing with them. And eventually, if you have enough lands in your bin, you can just your opponent probably won't be able to block you, which is cool. We have next up, we have Gaze of Granite. So this is a 3 CMC with X. Destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X or less. So a decent wipe there. We have Lavalanche. It is a 3 CMC with X that deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker and each creature that player or that planeswalker's controller controls. Very powerful, especially when you're playing out of the box with these. Next up, we have the Savage Twister. It deals X damage to target creature, X damage to each creature, so and this with X, which is really good. We have Decimate, which is a 3 CMC sorcery that destroys target artifact, target creature, target enchantment, and target land. Very good for 4 mana. Basically, if you're playing multiplayer, you can hit something from each player. Now we're going to move on to the lands, guys. We do get a decent chunk of lands with the deck. So first off, we have the Command Tower, and we have the Savage Lands, so just our typical Johns. We do get 2, I believe, of the search, of the tap sack search. Mountain Valley and Rocky Tar Pit. We have Brighton Woodland and Myriad Escape. Unfortunately, I don't believe I got the green-black search one. I couldn't seem to find it when I was going through it again. Would have loved to put that in Spiders. We also get Myriad Landscape and Brighton Woodland. Now, these are 2 cards you see I do play in my Spiders, and I did have them proxy, so I didn't actually own them, but now I own them. So they're going in. So they both allow you to tap for colorless mana, and then you can sack them to search for extra lands as well, which is pretty cool. We get and of course this will hit our graveyard triggers for our lands, which is good. We have Warp Landscape, which taps for colorless mana, and you can tap 2 to sack it and search for a basic land card, put on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. We also get Terramorphic and Evolving Wilds, which is good as well. It helps hit our land targets in grave. We get the Jund Paranorma, which of course we tap for colorless, pay 1 and sack it, and put one of the 3 basic Jund lands on the field. We get the Forge of Heroes. This is another new land, I believe. So choose it taps cost mana, and you get to tap it. Choose target commander that entered the battlefield this turn. Put +1/+1 counter on, or if it's a creature, or it gets a loyalty if it is a planeswalker. So that's good in a lot of different decks. We have Bajuka Bog, which can exile people's bin, which is really cool, and tap for black. Then we have a Gonari Garden. So when it enters, we get a 0/1 green plant creature token, or we can tap for green. We have Grim Blackwoods, which taps for colorless, and then we can pay 4, tap it to sack, and draw a card. We have Temple of the False God, which taps for 2 colorless if we have 5 or more lands. Again, not too hard in this deck. We have the Haunted Fengraf, which taps, and we can pay 3, sack it to return a creature card at random from graveyard to hand. The only problem with that card is it's at random, otherwise it's still pretty cool. We do get the 3 bounce lands, the 3 dual cost bounce land, double mana bounce lands. They're decent dual lands out of the box for precons, but at the end of the day, there are better cards you can play. We get the 3 cycle lands, which is really nice. The 3 basic cycle lands for our colors as well, which is good. Helps us draw cards as well as hitting extra lands in our bin for those cards we want lots of lands in bin for. We do get the 3 tap dual lands that give us 1 life when we play them, which is good, because these are probably some of the best budget dual lands you can get, because they do actually give you something other than the the pay 2 life comes into play tapped, or comes into play tapped, or comes to play tapped. You don't have to control this other one, but those are relatively more pricey. Then we just get our forests, our mountains, and our swamps. Anyway, guys, that is it for everything you get in the main deck. I'm going to quickly go through the tokens you get. And then we're just going to call it the end of this video. So taking a look at the tokens, guys, the first tokens we're going to take a look at, of course, are the Dragon Eggs. So the Dragon Eggs are 0/2 defenders that are dragon that when they die create a 2/2 red dragon creature token with flying and with fire breathing. So we can obviously, when they die, they've turned into these little cute little 2/2 dragons. They can be quite annoying, especially if we do have a lot of land, because they can get pretty big with their fire breathing ability. Next up, guys, we do get some cats for our commander's ability. We do get 6 cat tokens. Did we get 6? No, we get 4. No. Oh, right, they double them weirdly. We get 6 cat tokens with Forest Walk for our commander's ability, which is cool. We also get a Thopter token because one of our cards does actually make a Thopter token. And that is, of course, the reverse side of our elementals. We get a Beast token that one of our other cards makes, which is cool. We get 2 Beast tokens, actually. So we get our plant. We also get a plant token. And we get our worm tokens. So obviously, I think they try to give you 2 of each. Yeah, because we do get another plant token here. They do try to give you 2 of each, so you can have like 1 tapped, 1 untapped, which is pretty cool. And you can use dice to resemble the rest of them. But anyway, guys, that is it for the deck analysis of the cards in it. I do think this deck is quite fun to play. I believe everyone said it was pretty underpowered when they announced the full list. I think it is quite powerful out of the box. It's not the strongest, but if it goes off, it can be pretty devastating, especially if you're hitting those landfall creatures every turn. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments below, please feel free to let me know. What do you think of the deck? Do you think that which of the 3 commanders do you think is actually best for the deck? Fantas, the Hydra, or Windgrace himself? Do you think that Fantas makes a good spider commander? And would you actually like to see a deck based around a spider deck with Fantas as the commander, which I am potentially planning? Still picking out a bunch of the bugs with that potential idea, no pun intended. Anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you for my next video.